So, despite some strong economic numbers, new polling finds most Americans believe the country is in a recession. It is not. In the latest Harris poll conducted for The Guardian, 56% of adults expressed the belief that we are in a recession. That includes 67% of Republicans, 49% of Democrats, and 53% of independents. And although inflation has fallen sharply over the past year, 72% of adults still think that is increasing. Joining us now, former Treasury official.
All right, hold on. Two things. One, look down here. Among 2,119 people who took this survey, that is such a small sample size of how people feel that the U.S. economy is in a recession. Well, first of all, it's a question. And I think they're trying to trick people with this to saying yes so they can make them look dumb. Especially trying to make Republicans look dumb, right? Is the U.S. economy in a recession? Okay, the U.S. is not in a recession because we have continuous growth in GDP above 0%, right, since 2022. Now, people probably said yes if it feels like we're in a recession. Yes, I agree that it feels like a recession because of this high inflation. It's really hard to save money, have expendable income, when although you may have a better paying job right now, better than before, however, rent, groceries, everything else in this inflation time is taking a lot more than what you gained in your wage. So it feels like we're going backwards. And the second part, where are we at? Is inflation increasing in the U.S.? Yes. Yes, it is. And then he had the audacity to say, although it's been going down, it's still really high. It's still at like 3.5% of where the Federal Reserve wants it to be at because they like that sweet spot of 2%. But yeah, it is technically still increasing over time. The only way for inflation to not be increasing in the U.S. is if we have quarter over quarter of 0% inflation. Not even the 2% where the Federal Reserve wants to keep inflation at. Because that is saying yes to this question, is inflation increasing in the U.S.? But 0%.
72% of adults still think that is increasing. Joining us now, former Treasury official, Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Ratner, to help us separate perception from the facts of this economy. Steve, good morning. So we can start with that idea of the United States being in a recession right now, which it plainly is not. We can talk about why so many Americans believe that, but let's talk first in your chart about where we really are.
Yeah, Willie, it's really quite an extraordinary poll. We've seen polls before that show Americans having a more negative view on the economy. I've never seen one quite like this. These are the numbers you mentioned.
Dude, negative view on the economy? Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much to understand that everything's so expensive. That's why people have a negative view on the economy. People's buying power sucks right now.
In your lead-in that roughly more than half of Americans think we're in a recession. It is divided somewhat by party. More Republicans, 67%, feel it than Democrats, but even Democrats, 49% feel it. We've seen this kind of divergence before.
This is supposed to look like Republicans are dumber. With a graph like this, it looks like Republicans are dumber than independents and Democrats. Of course, we have a question of, are we in a recession? People, of course, are going to take it in like, does it feel like we're in a recession? Out of the 2,000 people they asked, right? So this is, I don't know what this attempt is by MSNBC. I know it's a liberal media. I get it. They like to do this because Fox News does the same thing, right? Fox News likes to call Democrats idiots. They both do this. But this is a trick. Come on.
Before, and interestingly enough, it flips around with every election, not surprisingly. But here's the reality. The reality is the economy has basically been growing since COVID, except for a very small downturn here. Under Joe Biden, it's grown by 2.8% a year, which is actually slightly faster than it was growing under Trump, even before COVID hit. And so you...
I mean, first of all, besides this little dip of a recession that we actually did technically have, right, in 2022. But then there's a downtrend overall, yes, there are 2 quarters where it was significantly high in real GDP, but then it went back down, and there's a downward trend. This here with Trump era, up, down, it's kind of a roller coaster. So it's consistently up and down, but I wouldn't say if it's consistently going down or up. I mean, I'm not saying Trump was great. I'm not here to defend him or root for him or anything. I don't like Republicans or Democrats. I don't like any of those parties. But nevertheless, I like how he just graced over 2022. It's like, oh, don't worry about that. No, that was nothing. We're good after that.
So you can see every quarter we've had reasonably strong economic growth. So why people feel this is really quite a mystery.
Why people feel this? Yeah, I mean that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. He just said, why do people feel this? It wasn't what people think, because he wanted to call them out. Saying, you think we're in a recession? Ha ha ha, we are not. But now you're saying, oh, why do people feel that we're in a recession? We feel is different. Because it really does feel like that. My buying power sucks. Everyone's buying power sucks.
So, Steve, what about, this other sort of low unemployment, a surging stock market, and yet ... How do you explain what's going on with the economy?
Yeah, you get the same kind of news, results when you look at those kinds of things. 50% of Americans think unemployment is at a 50-year high. 50% think it's at a 50-year high. Unemployment is actually at a 50-year low.
What? Okay. The question, is unemployment at a 50-year high? 49% of people say yes. Could be a trick question, right? Is it at a 50-year high? I mean, who can think back that far? And who knows that information? I think people are just going to say yes because we've been seeing on the news lately all the layoffs that's been happening like crazy. Yet unemployment's at 3.9%. I think most people know that the unemployment numbers they put out is not true. It does not reflect real unemployment because the statistics are skewed. Like, here's one example. Say you are unemployed. It's already difficult to get unemployment insurance. Okay, so you're not going to be on this statistic. But say if you start getting it, okay, you're on the statistic that you're on the unemployment. But that unemployment benefit only lasts for 6 months. When it dries out, you're no longer in the unemployment statistic. And there's so many people who've been unemployed beyond 6 months. And there's also people who don't qualify because they quit their job or something, right? So you can't collect unemployment if you quit your job. But there's other reasons why people are not on the unemployment, but they don't have a job. But to be fair, both parties do this.
It's really amazing. Unemployment is below 4%. It's been below 4% for months and months now. And it is it's just extraordinary that people think we're at a 50-year high. You can see some of the highs over here. Another issue is stocks. Half of Americans think stocks are down this year. Stocks are actually up 11% this year. They're up 45% since Joe Biden took office. Complete disconnect in people's minds between perception and reality of the stock market.
Oh, why is the stock market high? Because of crazy inflation pushes it up. Inflation pushes up the stock market. Of course it's going to go up higher. Of course it's going to go up higher. I mean, to make an example, let's just say I sell cheeseburgers. Say, I'm just making an example. I sell cheeseburgers for $1 a piece. And I sold to 100 customers. And I made $100. 5 years later, with inflation, my cheeseburgers cost $10 a piece. And I sold to 100 people. Hey, I made $1,000 though. That sounds better than $100, right? However, your buying power for everything else in life costs 10 times more. Or more, because everything keeps, depending on what you need, costs a lot more. But, that was a very simple term. I get it, I know. But still, with inflation and the amount of money that's being pumped into the economy, of course the stock market's going to shoot up.
Market.
Well, it's there are some people who are legitimately feeling the pinch still. And yet, though, overall, Americans have a very negative perception of Biden's economy. And is that fair? What do you see?
What's interesting, and we've looked at some of these numbers before, is that if you ask people how their own finances are, about 75% think they're okay. And that really goes all the way back to 2018. Pretty consistent.
Is that true? What personal finances? Isn't there like more than half Americans can't afford a $500 emergency?
Consistently. What's happened in the last number of years, and not just under Biden, but it really started back in about 2019 or thereabouts, the perception of how local economies are doing has deteriorated, and the perception of how the national economy is doing has deteriorated. So people have created this dichotomy in their minds between the national economy, their local economy, and themselves.
You got that wrong, by the way. Because he was pointing at this, called that national, and then he called this one personal. But anyway, there's a downward trend here, whether this is true or not. But he's highlighting there's a downward trend about national and local economies. But wonder why that is. People are not buying as much because everything costs so much more.
Also interesting, most recently, and these are from some other polls that have come out lately. What's also interesting is the way divergence between sentiment and approval has occurred. People's sentiment about the economy has actually been trending up. We had one bad number the other day, but we'll have to see if it's an aberration, if it jumps around a little bit. But the general trend has been improving sentiment. On the other hand, Biden's approval ratings have been trending down. Now, there are obviously a lot of other things going on, particularly the war in Gaza and so on and so forth. But there's
so on and so forth. What about immigration and inflation? He's just not going to mention that, right? But I mean, they got that right at least. That Biden's approval is going downwards. That is true. And the sentiment why things are going down is because it could be that the small, very small sample size of people that they ask, 2,000 people, of course you're going to have up and downs like that.
There seems to be now a spread between how people feel about the economy to some degree and how they feel about Biden.
So let me bring Jen Palmieri into this, because what does the Biden campaign do with this? There is not just what Steve has laid out, but you have politicians, Nikki Haley, the Trump campaign, screaming from the rooftops pretty much anything about the Biden economy being, a complete failure and not a lot of truth to what they're saying. And then also some right-leaning networks echoing what you could argue is disinformation or at least loose facts. How does the Biden campaign pierce through this?
I mean, the first thing I would want to...
Well, I want to know what loose facts means. But what do you do if you're managing the Biden campaign? Because I mean, you can't say anything about immigration because he's banking so much on immigrants and their votes, right? Because there's plenty of people who are, they still have relatives that are, alive that are of immigrants. Like my grandparents migrated here. My parents migrated here. Well, I migrated here and became a U.S. citizen. And, Democrats focus so much on helping immigrants. So, of course, they're going to try to get them to get their support. But, of course, there's so much focus on immigrants. Are they actually focusing on American citizens themselves at all? Because I don't know if it's just me. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please feel free to say in the comments. But I feel like Biden administration is not really focusing on most citizens. I think the only ones he's really put a focus on are those in student loan debt that he's trying to forgive. Don't get me wrong, I'm for student loan forgiveness, but not at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer. I think these universities that have continuously overpriced, cost of tuition criminally over decades, they are the ones that should fork the bill on student loan forgiveness. But that's a different topic. Money going overseas to Ukraine, Israel, everywhere else, yet not helping American people because there's no money for it. Look at Maui. That still hasn't helped the people there. I haven't heard anything. I see daily on Ukraine and Israel, but nothing on Maui. What about East Palestine? We already forgot about that, right? Did they get help? Not really. Not enough. Not compared to the people in Ukraine and Israel. I got to keep going with this video, but I'm sure there's much more examples, so feel free to comment more examples. I look forward to reading those.
try to understand is how is to look at the data to understand why this is happening. I mean, it's interesting, Steve said, sort of where things diverged from what reality is and how people feel about it. It was around 1920. I mean, I think that people are still in just such...
Oh, hold on. 1920s. 1929 was a Great Depression. So yeah, people are going to feel, different because they lost everything. But are you just not going to say that this inflation is hurting everyone? Because that's the number one thing right now. Is this inflation. What do you mean you don't know? In this title, The U.S. Economy, Perception versus Reality, they haven't really touched the reality of inflation and how much it impacts everyone's daily lives. Let me go back a little bit.
I mean, I think that people are still in just such trauma from COVID, from what happened to jobs, what happened to prices, supply chain during that time. They're still just feeling very uncertain. And so, and prices are still high. Inflation's not growing, but we don't have deflation. So I think what you want to do...
Okay, there's a mention of inflation. Two things. The trauma from the past few years with supply chain, COVID, jobs shifting and whatnot. I think we can move on from that now. Also with deflation, I'd like to see deflation. It's actually what we need. Just look back at the numbers of where we won that nice 2% level of affordability from 2019 and what it should be versus what it is now. And just figure out deflation and how much prices need to go down. We need periods of 0% and negative percent of inflation, not this 2% that the Federal Reserve keeps pushing, right? Year over year, 2%. That's a sweet spot. No, it's not. Things are so expensive. We need a moment. We need a breather on how expensive everything is right now.
I think you really want to let people know there is a strong foundation under us. So it's not so much Biden taking credit. I did this, I did that. I made everything better. But believe in the strong foundation of the economy so that you know that this is real and it's something we're going to build on. And then let people know what you're doing to make things more affordable to them. That's like the cost of insulin going down. Note when prices are decreasing, that we're seeing that some major chains have decided to do that to show people both the big picture, it's better, but then also the small differences in their own life of ways they're trying to make things more affordable, whether that's through student loans, healthcare, or even just noting when prices are dropping. And I feel like then maybe it can kind of take hold for people to be a little more real.
All right.
There's the end of that video, but she mentioned ways of prices can go down, like tuition. You can stop with the government guarantees to student loans. Tuition would drop quick. And a lot of the medical supplies that people need, it's a monopoly. And there's too much of big pharmaceuticals and insurance in bed that causes prices to go up. That needs to be broken up. The whole American healthcare system is screwed up. All it is for people to get rich by keeping American people sick. And it's a horrible thing in our culture that needs to be changed. Anyway, I'm going to read some comments. Ryan Garnick said, I made $19.25 an hour in 2019, and I make $34 now. That's great, but I'm no closer to being able to buy a home. Can't save when rent is through the roof. And not just rent, utilities, groceries, car insurance, health insurance, everything's increased more. So it's I don't even know if, although you made more money, your wage went up, but everything else costs so much more, so it feels like you're going backwards. It's like you can't win, you can't get ahead. Picking for Gold says, I'd be curious about a follow-up question. Please define a recession. Yeah, they probably should have covered that first before mocking people about that they got wrong or that we're in a recession when we're really not. Let's go over that first. Knight of Virtue said, unemployment being low doesn't mean it's easy to get a job. If we're not in a recession, we are recession adjacent. Wages and purchasing power have dropped much faster than inflation. Congress cannot get anything done. No, they can't. Everything moves slow in government. Because politicians are thinking about what's in it for me so I can get reelected. That's what's on their minds first before actually helping people. and it's a shame. Sailboat Girl says, the middle class is getting killed with higher prices on everything. This is why people think we're in a recession. Yeah, that's why, think and feel, or knowing that we're in a recession, it just feels like we're in a recession. That's probably what people want to answer. It's like, yes, my feeling is like, this is what's actually going on. Yeah, we're technically not in a recession, but this inflation makes it feel like we're in a recession because I can't afford crap. JD says, misinformation is more entertaining. Sunspark says, these mother effers telling us we're crazy when we feel the lower standard of living. They are selling you lies. Yeah, I feel like it. This video did no justice, right? It's just trying to mock people. All right, that's it for this video. It's going on for a little too long. If you made it this far, I believe I deserve a subscribe. Please like as well and comment below. I do read comments and I look forward to reading them. And until next time, take care. Bye.